What's the hubbub? Most of the hubbub going on today is back to the WBD buyout soap opera. I will give you the rundown on what it means to the Gunn DCU versus SnyderVerse DCEU debate. I did want to point this out at the top of the video, though. Zack Snyder says James Gunn is a great filmmaker and his Superman 2025 is awesome. How many RestoreSnyder channels are covering this praise? Ouch, I can't help but react to this.
It's been very kind. He said you've been very kind.
James is cool.
James Gunn.
Look, I wish them all the best, and I don't have any. Like, it is what it is. It kind of it's a weed. You know, that 3-movie trilogy is a weed that just won't die. You know, and so it doesn't need to, like, it grows on its own. It has its own life, and it doesn't really is not concerned, I don't think, with James's Superman, which is amazing, and you know, all the best to them. And I can't wait to see the next movie, and it's just awesome. It just really, to me, it's just not the same thing. It's just like a different thing.
Is there anything when you saw James's version that, I mean, only James could do in that way that you appreciated in his take
of course, James is singular in his storytelling, in his ability to kind of channel sort of mythological pop culture into like what I would consider just iconic and very particular point of view that's both poignant and funny and all the things, you know. And I think he's like he's the best at it that I can think of, and I think that he's a great steward of that world. So, you know, that's good. That's great for fans.
You both are class acts.
They are friends, and the Snyder cult can't handle it, to the point they even try to pretend it's Gunn that would have a cult, when I'd outline at this time it wouldn't even be possible, let alone make sense. Zack Snyder developed what many describe as a cult-like following, largely because his vision for DC was cut short, which created a strong emotional narrative around something unfinished and taken away. After Man of Steel and Batman v Superman led into Justice League, studio interference and Snyder's departure resulted in a version of the film that differed from his original plan. This sparked the highly organized Release the Snyder Cut campaign, which eventually led to the release of Zack Snyder's Justice League in 2021. This period included almost all DC fans, though not a centralized Snyder-only group. As there was no James Gunn DCU yet, many of the fans who left the SnyderVerse DCEU in favor of the Gunnverse DCU actually had supported the Snyder Cut. They just didn't agree, after the badly ended DCEU mess, that the Snyderverse needed restored in favor of the Gunn DCU starting up. That victory to Snyderbros reinforced a strong group identity among supporters, turning Fandom into a movement centered on restoring an abandoned creative vision. Snyder's highly stylized, mythic, and polarizing approach also contributed to intense loyalty. Because his work divided audiences and critics, supporters often felt defensive and unified against mainstream criticism. The combination of an unfinished story, a clear studio versus creator narrative, and fan campaign helped solidify a passionate and highly vocal base, garnering a label as cult-like. For some, they enjoyed the identity of belonging to a movement, but it morphed from less about movies and almost more into being in a movement itself. In contrast, James Gunn does not currently have that type of movement around the new DCU because the franchise is active and still unfolding under his leadership. There is no cancelled storyline to restore. I know perception that his vision was taken away, and no underdog narrative fueling organized online campaigns. That Gunn's previous work has generally been more broadly accepted and mainstream due to Marvel's success, which tends to produce fans, but not the same defensive movement-style loyalty, because he is currently in charge and shaping the direction of the universe rather than fighting to complete a halted one, there is less reason for supporters to rally in a combative or restorative way. With all that said, I'd still be open to an Infinite Crisis movie, which would be Gunn DCU versus Snyder DCEU. That ultimately has to come together for the sake of humanity by the final act blending their strength and weakness. Specifically, I think a Superman versus Superman central story could work well, as in Cavill's Superman being a bit more ruthless and learning to embrace his idealistic side. Cornsweat's Superman could be seen as too idealistic and having to center that within a lesson of when to drop the proverbial Kryptonian hammer on enemies. I'd be open to a crossover. The Snyderbros are the ones that want it all or nothing, basically identifying themselves as Snyder DC only fans. They don't even support Snyder outside of these movies. Have you seen the RestoreSnyder channels hyping up his lesbian action movie with Tig Notaro? I think not. As for the buyout situation, let's deep dive it further. Logically and realistically, the DC properties are a small piece of the majority of content being acquired. Whether Team Gunn or Snyder minded on your support, an acquisition of this size isn't being decided based on either of them. If anything, Gunn was used to show there was a verse in order to be more attractive, as they knew they'd be shopping the WBD. However, it was only one active component, not likely a deciding factor on anyone purchasing it. It's sort of like a woman picking out her clothes for a date. Okay, very nice dress and some heels, but if her hair is crazy and her makeup looks like a clown show, and she's sporting a poor personality and attitude, the overall likelihood of a relationship out of it working, well, it's probably not ending up in a marriage contract, to put it politely. The whole idea that either Netflix or Paramount would spend billions for the priority of restoring the Snyderverse also is pretty laughable. As I said on X, for some reason, the Snyderbros will go from Netflix is the path for Snyder to Paramount will buy the WBD just to restore the Snyderverse. Billions for Zack Snyder. By that, I mean putting all the spending power into a multi-layered company of the WB simply to bring back a director who was fired by them prior is unlikely. It's actually quite bizarre. Let's bring back the guy who was fired because the last 5 years of the verse he established struggled to even get 300 million worldwide per movie numbers. The dead cinematic universe extinction of the DCEU has a very motivated fandom and a cult portion. That doesn't mean it is or ever was enough to properly compete with Marvel. If I viewed this strictly through the lens of best fit for Gunn's DCU, I'd probably say, based on the reports, that Paramount probably favors Gunn more. I also probably feel more comfortable with theatrical releases, staying power in terms of Paramount. If you guys caught prior news articles from the end of October, it was stated, per Bloomberg, Paramount Skydance CEO David Ellison, who's been the driving force behind the bids for WBD, wants to keep the creative teams of the two studios while consolidating some of the marketing and distribution. According to people familiar with his plans, there was also a follow-up by the John Campea show, and he stated the following. I know a couple people over at Paramount, into which I wrote, and I quoted this article out of Bloomberg. I said, Ellison plans on keeping the creative teams in place, and I specifically and directly asked, does that include WB Motion Picture co-chairs Michael DeLuca and Pamela Abdi? And does that include James Gunn and Peter Safran? To which they gave me a simple response, yes. Now you see, RestoreSnyderVerse channels who always stated Netflix was the path and even had dedicated hashtags for Netflix buying and restoring. Snyder in charge, well, they are now saying that since Paramount looks more likely, suddenly they are a better option than Netflix would have been. There is no other way to put it than groupthink copium. Look at Mr. Phenom here. Knowing cosmic book news is never news, but delivering their slant as the gospel.
Looks like James Gunn will be fired. It looks like, because Paramount does not want James Gunn. And it looks like Zack Snyder will be restoring his Snyderverse, and he will be finishing his trilogy. Hey, let the haters throw the combos. They gonna be throwing them, bobbing and weave. That's the haters right there.
Maybe some wised up to see, after Rebel Moon criticism and cancelled projects of Zack Snyder, it wasn't looking good for Netflix. Where are we now on the buyout? I could try to slant this as Paramount fully locked and favors Gunn, but I actually think, like Tyrone Magnus, we need to wait this out a bit further on fully confirming.
Now we wait. We see what's going to happen. We see what's going to happen. See, because a lot of people were worried. They were like, well, Netflix canceled certain things with Zack Snyder. And the word was they didn't feel that Rebel Moon did well enough, so that's why they canceled him. So people were saying, nah, that ain't really it, just because he's working on other stuff, and I don't know.
We've been down that road before, and regardless of who you favor or believe comes out on top, there are unknowns even now. Let's say I even favor Paramount as a DCU fan. The actual chain of events still aren't complete. Ted Sarandos has built a reputation for disciplined deal-making, and that philosophy appears to be guiding this situation as well. Sarandos' position is not that he's unwilling to pursue the asset. It's that he's unwilling to overpay for it. Netflix was seeking to acquire only its streaming service, HBO cable channel and film studio business. The transaction we negotiated would have created shareholder value with a clear path to regulatory approval, Netflix said in a statement Thursday afternoon. However, we've always been disciplined, and at the price required to match Paramount Skydance's latest offer, the deal is no longer financially attractive, so we are declining to match the Paramount Skydance bid. Netflix co-CEOs Ted Sarandos and Greg Peters said that this transaction was always a nice-to-have at the right price, not a must-have at any price. At Netflix, acquisitions are evaluated through a strict return on investment lens. The company prioritizes long-term subscriber growth, content value, and sustainable margins over splashy headline deals. If the bidding climbs beyond what Netflix believes the asset is fundamentally worth, whether based on projected cash flow, strategic fit, or integration risk, Sarandos would rather walk away than stretch the balance sheet to win a bidding war. Overpaying in a heated takeover environment could signal desperation rather than strategic strength only. If the numbers don't truly support accretive growth within a reasonable time frame, the deal simply doesn't fit. Sarandos' stance communicates, we're interested, but at the right price, Netflix is prepared to step aside rather than compromise its financial discipline. The Paramount deal is not finalized. A WB shareholder vote is scheduled for March 20th. The board of directors will then have to approve a formal termination of the Netflix agreement. So what do you guys think if Paramount really does have this in the bag? Is there a RestoreSnyderVerse path? Let me know in the comments below after smashing the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. You'll get notified of new videos. With that, it's today's Hubbub. No SnyderVerse, no problem. Wallets open for the only active DC movieverse, which is the Gunn DCU. Boom active and no restore needed. Ahaha, Snyder Simps.
I actually have to go.
Oh, great. This is what you do every time.
I'm not doing anything.